Have you found yourself deep in grief and thinking to yourself in your head, I just want to be happy again. I don't know how to get there, but I just want to feel happy. If that's you, today we are talking about the elements that will foster happiness. And I'm going to give you some insights that I've learned from one of my mentors, Mel Robbins. So stay tuned. Welcome back. So I try to share with you as often as I can some of the things that I'm learning as I go, and I'm constantly watching podcasts, following people, understanding the science behind our emotions. And I found this fantastic podcast from Mel Robbins that she released about 10 months ago, but it just popped up into my feed recently. And I want to share with you some of the things that she was talking about because I think it very much relates to what's happening during the grief process. So her podcast was about the science of happiness and what makes us happy. And she gave some really good insights into what's going on. And with so many of us, right, the number one thing that I hear people tell me when it comes to their grief and their grief journey is how lonely they are. And when we're lonely and feel disconnected from other people, when we feel like other people don't understand, we kind of spend time beating ourselves up, saying that things aren't the way we want them to be. And that leads us to saying, well, I'm just flat out unhappy. So I want to share with you some of the things that she mentioned in the podcast. And I want to start with the fact that so many of you have been so brave, right? What I encourage you to do here, when I say grief is a process, I encourage you to lean into your grief and to heal. Because I know that leaning into your grief, doing the work, analyzing your emotions, understanding why some things upset you, why you're triggered by things, maybe looking into the trauma of what has happened. All of these things are the work that I encourage you to do. And one of the things that I realized in Mel's podcast when she was sharing was something that, I need to improve on as well. And so I want to share it with you. And that is for all of you who are doing the work, who are brave, who are leaning in. Maybe you've been in one of my courses. Maybe you have my journal and you've been working through the journal. Maybe you've been journaling independently. Maybe you've been going to grief groups, right? Or trying to see a therapist and work through all of the things that happen as a result of your grief. First, I want to say congratulations on doing the work. But what I was reminded is that we sometimes are so focused on our healing and on doing the work and trying to get better, trying to find this happiness, that we forget that we need to have some fun. So in my Facebook group on every Friday, we have a Freedom from Grief Friday. And it's one day where I encourage those who are in the group to step away from their grief for just a minute, for just a day. It's not going anywhere, and to be free from it. And so I like to put things that make us laugh. We put things like watching puppy videos. We talk about what are we going to do over the weekend? Where are we going to find fun? And we need to incorporate more of that. So I want to encourage you to think for just a minute here. What are the things that you find to be fun in your life? What are the things that maybe you're not doing as much as you used to do? I want you to drop those below. What do you consider to be fun? Maybe it's being with other people. Maybe it's interacting with a craft or a hobby that you do. Maybe it's playing board games, laughing at movies, right? Like watching an old movie that makes us laugh. What are the things that can bring a little bit more fun in our lives? And these are the things that make us happier. So we're talking today about fostering happiness and creating more happiness in our life. Your grief is going to be there. The sadness is going to be there. And so what I'm encouraging you to do is to add an element of fun. And when we think about being happy and we say, well, I just want to be happy, some of us, we tend to say, I will be happy when this happens. I'll be happy when I've grieved longer. I will be happy when I get my life back in order. I will be happy when I find a new job. I will be happy when I figure these things out. I will be happy when I find a new place to live, right? As a result of all the changes that often happen as part of your loss, you're waiting for happiness to come to you. And Mel was talking in the podcast about how looking externally for happiness is something that is going to fail us. And so we don't want to do that. We don't want to put happiness in the future, saying, I'll be happy when. And I think when we think about relating to grief and what we've been through, sometimes many of us will say, I was happy when. I was happy when they were alive. I was happy with the way my life was, and now I'm not. And so I think that's really important. But if you're in a situation where you're saying, hey, I just want to be happy again, well, what do you do? And she gives 3 different elements of happiness and then things that you can do to help foster happiness. And I just love these so much that I wanted to share them with you. So again, this is all from Mel, but I see it popping up in my life and in my grief journey. So that's why I'm sharing it with you. And the first thing that she said was true happiness doesn't come from things outside of us. That true happiness, one of the elements to foster happiness is, and here's her words, finding the extraordinary in the ordinary. So what are the things that are in your life that maybe you take a little bit for granted, but are the things that are your ordinary everyday things that you say, I like this. This makes me happy, right? So for me, I bought these coffee mugs. Sorry, there's lipstick on it. I bought these coffee mugs because they're textured. I love the texture of things. And so it's a simple, ordinary thing. But when I hold my cup of coffee in the morning, right, I say, I really like this. When I have moments with my son where we're laughing or playing a game or doing something very mundane, it makes me happy. Last night, just as he was about to drift off to sleep, he says, Mom, I forgot to tell you, I got a really good score on my math test today. And for him, it was something that made him so proud and bring him so much joy. And for me, as his mother, hearing that, yes, it's a simple thing, but I'll tell you what, there's a lot of joy in that for me. And that makes me feel truly happy. Happy because he's proud of himself. And so him learning to be proud of himself is something that I'm very focused on, so that he feels good about himself and who he is, and he feels like he is enough. And so when I hear him saying, I'm proud, it makes me joyful because I feel like I'm doing something right with him, right? That we're on the right track. So my question for you is, where in the ordinary moments of your life can you find something extraordinary? Maybe I had my sister-in-law called me up this past week because she had snow where she lived. And she was just sharing how much she loves the pristine look of snow right after it's fallen. And I myself am surprised now that I'm in Virginia Beach, how I actually enjoy the cold, because in San Diego, we didn't really have that much cold. And now I'm realizing, like, there's times when I love that fresh, crisp feeling of the snow. So I want you to spend a couple minutes today, drop some comments below. What are the things that are the ordinary that bring you joy? The things like my cup of coffee, feeling my son being proud of himself, or the coolness of the air in the morning on our way to the bus stop. What are the things for you in your life that are ordinary, that really you can say, these make me happy? They really are extraordinary elements in my life. So that's the first thing to foster happiness. And then secondly, when we talk about feeling lonely is something that when we say we're not happy, a lot of us are really just lonely. And so I want you to think about that, right? Because we all know, if you're deep in grief, if you've been going through the grief experience for any period of time and the process of grief, you know that it can feel really, really lonely. So I'm not going to leave us to saying we're not happy. Well, what do you do about that? So Mel presented this concept of relationships and having warm relationships and cold relationships. And anything that's a warm relationship is something that makes us feel warm and fuzzy. So you know the relationships that I'm talking about. If you have a friend that when you're together, you cannot talk to each other for a long time, but when you're together or when you're on the phone or in text communication, it makes you feel good. It makes you feel a little bit lighter. Maybe it's spending some time with someone in your family who is really dear and important to you. And when we think about grief, maybe it's the time that you spend talking to your loved one in your head or even out loud when you're alone after they have passed on, right? Because that relationship still exists. That is a warm relationship. Any relationship that makes you feel lighter, it makes you feel more connected, and there's a security in it. So our best relationships are the ones where we feel secure, we feel safe, we don't have to be a certain way or say certain things. Relationships where we don't feel judged, where we feel accepted and loved. And she gave us a challenge and said, if you're feeling lonely, there is a good probability that you do not have enough warm relationships in your life. And so she encouraged us and challenged us and said, well, you have to be the one to foster these warm relationships. So you have to be the one to reach out. You have to be the one to worry and think about other people as well and ask them. Maybe it's someone that you haven't talked to in a while, where you used to have a good relationship and it's gotten a little bit colder. Well, reach out. Go somewhere where you can spend time with other people, invite them to coffee, invite them to lunch. Take a leap and get out of the house. That is how we foster warm relationships. And the more of those that you can find, or even having one really good warm relationship, can make us feel less lonely and therefore happier. And she also said to be weary of what are cold relationships. So the cold relationships are really the opposite of warm relationships. So these are, sometimes we call them toxic relationships, and they can be with some of the people who are closest to you. So you have to be weary of those. These are the relationships where you're not feeling comfortable, where you're feeling judged, where you feel like you should say certain things or do certain things, right? These are the relationships that really probably need some boundaries, and maybe spending less time with those people, because they can actually steal your happiness. They can steal your joy and take it from you. So the second element that she said was to foster warm relationships. Where can you find warm relationships? I want you to drop comments below. Do you have warm relationships, or are you realizing that you don't and you need to foster them? And if you are one of the people who says, I don't have anyone, this happens a lot in grief. The people that we think are closest to us are going to be there for us. They disappear or they're not, and we're disappointed. If and when that happens and those relationships that you thought were warm have gone cold, then it's time to foster new ones. And when we talk about wanting safety and security in those relationships, there is no better place to find that than in my Facebook group. In my Facebook group, they are all people who have gone through or are continuing to go through the grief process, who are also striving for happiness, who are maybe feeling lonely. And this is your opportunity to connect to them, for you guys to work together, right? And develop some warm relationships. So you commenting on someone's post, you sending a private message on Facebook to that person, offering to send them an email or to do a check-in or to talk on the phone. I want you guys to do that in my Facebook group. So if you're not in the Facebook group, please go there, because that's what that is for. So if you are somebody who doesn't have a warm relationship, I want to encourage you to be the one to reach out first and see what you can foster. And that is going to add to feeling less lonely and feeling happier. And then the last element that she talked about has nothing to do with anyone else, and it has to do with ourselves. And it's about finding inner peace. And I fundamentally believe that my life journey is to find my own inner peace. And what is inner peace? Inner peace is feeling content and feeling secure in who you are, in the way your life is. And a big element of that Mel Robbins talks about in this podcast is not robbing yourself of that contentment and that security by all the things that we tell ourselves, where we're beating ourselves up, where we're feeling guilty, where we're talking and in our head about all the things that are wrong with us and how we should be. And if you're on this page and you're following me, you understand what that is, because you probably are too hard on yourself. And it's something that I work on all of the time, because I am too. So none of us are immune to this. So don't think that that's the case. But it's finding this inner peace. And another way to find this inner peace is accepting yourself, right? We talk a lot on this channel about forgiving yourself, about finding grace, letting some of the things go that lead us to anger and resentment, and where we feel betrayed by other people, right? Anger is a poison. We drink ourselves and hope that someone else will die. Have you heard that quote before? Our inner peace is our responsibility. And so how can you foster that inner peace? What are the things that make you feel joy? And reaching out to other people, developing those warm relationships, and making the extraordinary out of the ordinary. These are all things that are going to increase your happiness. And this is a scientifically proven fact. If you don't know Mel Robbins, one of the things I love about her is, one, she's very authentic, she's very real, and that's something I value highly. But she also brings the science in, and she brings data, and she talks about studies on this. So it is very well known, called the science of happiness, that these are the elements that will help foster happiness as you are going through your grief process and on your grief journey. And as part of feeling happy, remember, because I know if you're here, that you're a hard worker, that you want to lean into your grief, that you're doing the work and you're doing everything I say and you're watching these videos and you're leaning in. And I'm so very proud of you for that. But do not forget, and this is a reminder for me, that you need to have fun. There need to be elements of fun in your life. So go do something fun today. Put your grief on the back burner for just a few hours or maybe a day, because it's not going anywhere, and go have some fun.